Hey, greetings, Performance Reviews, where we give you the review from the technician's point of view. And today I want to talk about the trap of cheap vacuum cleaners. I'm Performance Reviews, and I do vacuum cleaners into technical tutorials on YouTube. I've also been in the vacuum industry for years, so I have a good understanding of vacuum cleaners and also the business sense of the industry and why things are the way they are. So I'm going to put a lot of detail in this video, so you're going to want to watch the whole thing all the way through. But in this video, I'm going to explain to you why cheap vacuum cleaners at Walmart, Target, or whatever your box store of poison is, are the most expensive ones. As crazy as that might sound, that is the truth, and let me explain. So, as you know, for $200 or less at one of those box stores, you're not going to exactly get a quality machine, especially something that has a motor that has to spin up and capture the dust and all that. So a lot of those machines are made to last under 200 working hours. Now, just for food for thought, a lot of the better vacuum cleaners are made to last 1,000 or 2,000 working hours. So that's a huge difference there. That means a lot of the disposable machines that you're going to see in the box stores for $200, $300 or less, they're meant to be thrown away every 2 years. They're like a disposable cigarette lighter. That means in 10 years, if every couple of years you've bought a new machine, you've spent $1,000. $1,000 on vacuum cleaners. You can buy a really nice vacuum cleaner for half that. That would be fine if they actually worked properly and you didn't care about the cyber waste problem. Let's talk about the waste problem first. I'm not an environmentalist by any stretch of the imagination, but it is very wasteful to throw away something that has as much raw material as a vacuum cleaner. Not only do you have a tremendous amount of plastic, you have a lot of raw copper, you have bearings, things like that cannot be easily recycled. The waste from throwing away a vacuum makes plastic bags and straws look like child's play. But now let's get to the bigger problem of them not working properly. Let me explain that part. Now let's get into the bigger problem of the vacuums not working correctly. With lesser vacuums, you run into a few major problems. Filtration is the first one we're going to talk about, and this is a huge problem. Most machines claim they have a HEPA filter. Why? A lot of times they do indeed have a HEPA filter slapped on the side. Very little air usually makes it to that filter, or in the case of shark vacuums and some of the cheaper ones, they claim they have a sealed system where all the air is supposed to go through the filter. The plastic housing is actually so cheap that when the motor heats it up from using the motor after a few months, it warps that housing, causing the machine to leak dirt. Speaking of leaking dust, some of the machines just don't even have a HEPA filter. They don't even have an exhaust filter, and they're just blowing dust out the backside, like some of the cheap Bissels. On top of that, the cost of running those machines tends to be more expensive. Even though the machine might only be $150 or $200, the cost of running some of these machines is $60 to $120 a year, which is insane considering the initial cost of the machine. And that's because they're bagless. A lot of machines that are bagless actually cost a lot more money to run than a bagged machine. Now you might say, I don't have bubble boy allergies, I don't have a sensitivity, why is filtration such a big deal with vacuum cleaners? Isn't it just a little dust? Well, no. Actually, it's a lot of dust. Very fast. Large particulate of any kind is known to cause lung disease, and that could be, whether it's vacuum dust, that could be drywall dust, etc. It could be smoking. Any of those things are notably bad for you. There's plenty of primary literature from sources far better than myself explaining that, so you can go look that up yourself. I want to give you an idea of how much dust we're talking about. Most vacuum cleaners move between 50 and 100 cubic feet per minute, which means in a few minutes it's already moved all the air in the room, and that means you're being forced to breathe that dust. So you're like being supercharged or turbocharged full of dust, and that's kind of gross, especially with machines that are just redistributing the dust. And if it's redistributing the dust, are you actually cleaning? If it's just putting the dust on other surfaces and then back onto the floor, kind of defeats the purpose of vacuuming. Better vacuums trap the dust, and trapping the dust is something that all vacuum cleaners should do and should be required by law to do. You can see in the EU where vacuum cleaners are actually regulated by the government and required to trap the dust and tell you how much they trap. I'm not calling for that here or anything like that, but that's just an interesting fact. That's how bad it is. The next big point is cleaning capability, and this is kind of a big one. Most cheap vacuums don't clean that well, especially when you start talking about cordless machines, really don't have a lot of power, or some of these basic machines that don't have a lot of vacuum power to actually get down and get the debris on your hard floor and on your carpet. Now, why is that a big deal? Well, If you rent, it's probably not a big deal. But if you have a house or you're trying to protect the carpet or the hard floor, leaving a bunch of debris on the floor is abrasive and just not great. And who wants to live in filth? As you can imagine, when you have a cheap motor and a vacuum and you don't have a lot of R&D budget, they're not going to clean well, and you're just going to end up with filth everywhere. And a lot of people, when they get a new vacuum or a good vacuum, you can go look on Reddit. There are plenty of posts about this. They are amazed how much dust and debris was left on their floors when they get a good machine. Another example of this is when you shampoo your carpet, it'll often pull up a lot of stuff your vacuum cleaner wasn't. And you can go take a look at carpet cleaning videos. I can't mention the name of that in YouTube, but there are plenty of YouTube videos about carpet cleaning showing just how bad carpet is when it's not cleaned properly, and hard floor. You can see that with a mop and a bucket as well. And I think a lot of people don't understand how much debris is left on hard floor if you don't vacuum it properly, and sweeping doesn't do anything pretty much. Now, another big point is cheap vacuums are a hassle to use. A lot of people hate vacuuming because they've only used cheap vacuums, and they are a hassle to use. Like a royal pain in the ass to use a bad vacuum versus a better vacuum where you use it and you put it in the closet and you don't maintenance it but once every 2 months. And I'm going to explain what I'm talking about here. So most machines that are cheap require you to maintenance them every time you use them. And if you're not doing that, you should. Most machines, Dyson, Bissell, Hoover, Shark, all of those require you to go outside and empty it because, again, you don't want to breathe that dust. Then you have something you need to wash, usually a pre-motor filter or such, which means your vacuum's out of commission after you vacuum unless you buy a second set of filters to keep around. And that's especially inconvenient if you live in an apartment complex and you have to go down a long hallway or walk outside to a dumpster to go empty that. And on top of that, like I mentioned earlier, because they're not intended to really last all that long, those filters tend to be pretty expensive and hard to come by. You really have to search Amazon even to find them, if they're even available. Some machines, the filters are just never available. So if they are available, then you're having to change something every 6 months. 6 months is good. That's like a Dyson. A Dyson to run a year usually costs between $40 and $80 to run a year. That's a lot of money on filters. And let's contrast that with the average cost of running a normal bagged vacuum cleaner. Most bagged vacuum cleaners are $20 to $30 a year to run. So ironically, not having bags is more expensive. Don't believe me, bags are better? Let me give you 2 examples. There's a great chart on Reddit showing how much most vacuum cleaners cost to run a year that are bagged, so you can go check that out. You can also Google that, go to Amazon, check out the supplies. I think the biggest tall tale sign of this is people who clean for a living, whether it be maids at a hotel, actual cleaning services, all used bagged vacuums. In fact, almost every commercial vacuum is a bagged vacuum. So there's something to that if there are institutions, not just one, but all of them use bagged vacuums. That may say something about which is better. The next is handling, and this is going to be something that you're not going to see in a YouTube video. You're not going to see in an online review somewhere. You're going to have to actually go out and touch the machine. But if you use a cheap machine, whether it's a Bissell, Hoover, Kenmore, something like that, and then you go to just even a modestly priced Miele C1 or a SEBO Dart, the handling difference is night and day. And what does that mean to you? Well, that means you're going to spend less time cleaning, and it's not going to be as dreadful when you have to do that house chore, being able to get the right tool for the job and just go to town and not have to fight the machine to get the job done. I'm going to put a card or a link below, however we're doing it on YouTube these days. I have 2 videos you should watch when buying a vacuum cleaner. One is canister versus upright, where I explain the differences between those 2 styles of vacuum cleaner. The next is going to be a handling video, where if you want a deep dive into vacuum cleaner handling, I actually explain the differences and some of the design differences. It's an interesting video. If you really want to get into the geeky details, I'd recommend you check out that second video. All right, let's talk numbers here. How much do you have to spend to actually get a good machine? Well, that's subjective, and I'm sure as this video ages and inflation happens, that number will go up. But right now, believe it or not, in the United States, whether you buy a vacuum at Walmart, a vacuum store, or a door-to-door salesman, or Amazon, the average price of a vacuum cleaner is a little bit above $700. That's a good chunk of change. We are talking about everything, whether it's a $100 machine or a $2,000 machine. So that's like the average in the middle of what they cost in 2024. Now, do you need to spend $700? Well, that depends. $700 is a good starting point. However, you want to buy a vacuum based on your needs, not based on how much it costs. While that is going to be a large factor, you don't necessarily buy a car based on cost. Let's say you need to pull a trailer. You're not necessarily going to go buy a $10,000 Hyundai to do that. You're going to go buy some sort of truck to pull that trailer. So again, you want to assess your personal flooring needs before we go vacuum shopping. Now, like anything else, if $700 or $500 is too much, then you can take a look at the secondhand market. And there are definitely a lot of good options. I can't tell you how many times I see for $25 to $150 premium vacuum that's ready to go, that all you gotta do is change the bags and the filters. Some of them might need an actual service at a vacuum store, but still, let's say you spend under $200 on a used vacuum that had an MSRP of $700 or $1,000. You're coming out ahead, and you're spending the same amount or less than you would have spent at Walmart, and you're getting something way better. So you want to take a look at your floors, whether you have hard floor, area rugs, only carpet, or if you're like me and most people, you're going to have a mixture. And machines that handle a mixture usually have a way of shutting off the roller, which means there's usually a second motor, so they do cost a little bit more, but it's going to be worth it to have the right tool for the job. If you only have hard floors and area rugs, that's going to be the least expensive type of machine you can buy for the most part. You get away with something like a basic Miele C1 for like $300 to $500, you get an excellent machine. If you have only wall-to-wall carpet, you'll need something with an electric roller from SEBO starting at about $500 that are great options for that. And then you have your multi-floor options. Again, check out my video on canisters. They typically are the best overall option for portable vacuum. What should you be looking for? Well, again, if you have just hard floors and area rugs, you're going to buy a different machine than if you have only carpet. Now, I do want to be reasonable here. I'm going to say you probably shouldn't ever spend more than about $1,500 in 2024 on a portable vacuum cleaner. There are some vacuums that are $2,000 and $3,000. They are really not worth it, and that's not reasonable. Now, I said portable. There are built-in vacuums, which are typically known as a central vacuum, which makes a hell of a lot of sense when you think about it. We don't carry around our hot water heaters. Why do we carry around our vacuum? Well, that's a question that's been asked and answered, and central vacuums have been around since the turn of the century, in the early 1900s. They make a lot of sense. Where you build the vacuum cleaner into the structure, you have a large motor that you don't maintenance often, and they're typically built to last 20 or 30 years. But they are a construction project. They can be added to an existing structure, or you can add it when you're building the house. But it is the best option of all the vacuum cleaners out there. Again, it's also the most costly option, because it's going to run you at least $3,000. Typical central vacuums are more between $4,000 and $7,000 to have installed right now, but they add equity to your house. I have other videos on that if you want to know more about those. So in conclusion, buy once, cry once, buy a quality machine, and it will last you 10, 20 years, and you won't have to keep buying something. You're also going to reduce cyber trash and waste, which is overall a good thing, no matter how you look at it. Where to get it? Well, if you're on a tight budget, your local marketplace, you want to go to a local vacuum store is usually the best option. Second would probably be the manufacturer's website or looking at Amazon, depending on the machine. I'll put some links below to some machines I recommend that help benefit the channel. Check out these videos here at the end. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.